What you may not know about the Trumpians' approach to Russia. For Europe, the problem with increasing GDP for defense is that it isn't quite that simple. Germany is no longer a coal powerhouse. England used up all its coal, no longer has cheap oil from the Middle East, and the North Sea has pretty much dried up. France is also struggling to hold on to its African interests. Guess who is pushing them out? Yes, Europe can increase defense spending by employing more bureaucrats, but spending more money, that is energy, on manufacturing is difficult because the EU simply doesn't have the oil and gas to do so. 3% GDP military spending isn't what Europe needs. What they need is tankers full of cheap oil and gas. Now, the Ukraine war has been good for both China and the United States. China forces Russia into selling oil at a discount. The US forces the EU into buying oil and gas at a premium. That has always been Russia's trump card. Trump recognizes that he doesn't need Europe because he's 100% transactional, only thinks about today. The US, China, and Russia all have the oil and gas and food necessary for independence. Do they need Europe? No. So why should they fight? The logic tells me that the Ukraine war is only part of World War III. The EU doesn't want to face the cold, hard facts. If it wants Russian resources, it must fight and die to get them. And I believe, eventually, it will. If Ukraine falls, the EU falls. From the beginning, EU politicians have not owned up to that. Instead, they frame it as a fight for democracy. Ukraine has been navigating these hard truths. They understand that every Russian drone was bought with revenues Russia took in by selling oil to China to build dishwashers for us. The U.S. no longer wants to play that game, use its oil and gas to manufacture more weapons for Ukraine. What will Americans get out of it? We now sell them all the gas, LNG they need, or Trump has decided they need, to run their increasingly pathetic economies. Why use energy to protect Ukraine if we'll keep buying Asian goods manufactured by buying and burning Russian oil and gas? If you accept that math, we, Americans, are ultimately paying for Russia's invasions of Ukraine. When do you see that on the news? So we're just hurting ourselves. Again, not my view, but everyone talks about Russia wanting to invade Europe. Why would they want that? They just want EU with a begging cup in the same relationship the EU has to the US and China. As for Ukraine, ultimately Russia will spit out that animal, tearing it apart from the inside. When the war ends for Ukraine, it will begin for everyone else. Like World War II, the US will try to stay out of it, but we're too dependent on global trade. I'm talking about Asian manufacturing. We can barely make a car where the wheels don't fall off. China is in the position we were back then. Tremendous, eye-popping manufacturing capability. The U.S. is as delusional as 1930s Britain, believing it's untouchable. Did you know that to many historians, Churchill was an arrogant idiot who did more harm in the beginning than he did at the end? We saved Britain. Who will save us? China can build weapons and tanks. We'll have to choose, but Europe first.